probably things that really make me super happy. Those aspiring, upcoming, high potential, early mid-career manager leaders that you might become those thought leaders and those that everyone's going to know their name and look up to. It's when you know you've had not only a front row seat, but had something to do with those individuals that have really achieved their dreams in their careers and become those CEOs or those elected officials.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, and even $100,000 weeks. Before Purple Circle, I've grown several 7- and 8-figure career coaching businesses myself, and have been a consultant at 2 career coaching businesses that are doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Career Coaching Secrets podcast. I'm your host Rexhen, and today's guest is Winslow Swart. He is an executive coach and business therapist who helps leaders and organizations align vision with strategy through deep leadership development, culture transformation, and full-scale organizational change initiatives. And it's a pleasure for me to have him on the podcast today. Welcome to the show, Winslow.
Thank you, Rexhen. I'm happy to be here. So really appreciate this.
Yeah, it's a pleasure for us to have you on. So thank you for coming. I wanted to first ask you, as an executive coach, so first, what inspired you to become a coach and then start your own coaching business?
Yeah, that's a really great question. What got me started on this career path, right? Did I fall into it or did I make some sort of decision? This is what I want to do when I grow up. So the origin story for me is I grew up in addition to a few other areas of endeavor. I'd been in the martial arts since very, very young, right? So since, in my case, it was in the early 1900s. So I had spent the better part of a half a century studying and mastering Japanese and Chinese martial arts and teaching them. And so by default, as a sensei, a shihan, a sifu, a kendoshi, I became finally an 8th dan in Japan in my discipline. Throughout my career, I guess I had been life coaching and career coaching all the time, right? And so kind of mid-career, really essentially when I was in my late 30s, I started to do some team building and leadership development work, facilitation, coaching, motivational speaking. And it was mostly bringing the distinctions of mastery from the dojo into the corporate world and into the public arena and changing the context. And I was doing my homework on what they were doing at Sloan School of Management at MIT, or Sensei stuff, Hemming stuff, all this other, trying to figure out, okay, how do I be able to speak this language? And then I had this epiphany, I need to sharpen my tools. So I went back to college midlife while I had a house full of little children and got my degrees in organizational psychology and organizational development, did undergrad, graduate, and doctoral studies in the field because I kind of felt like an imposter, right? Mm-hmm. What's funny about that is, while that was great for expanding my street creds and my toolkit, some of the best stuff that I bring to my clients is the things I developed before I knew any better. Right. And so that's so part of, let's say, sometimes the curriculum or the toolkit I bring to cohorts or to coaching clients is the original ideas of how do you help people succeed in life and in work and in career and everything else. So yeah, it kind of comes from that. It's a hybrid in my case.
Interesting. And so when thinking about the time that you also spent doing this throughout the years, for example, when looking at 1 million dreams, is this part of the coaching, by the way?
Yeah. What's interesting was, I had worked in sort of the tech ecosystem for many years, and while I was helping coach teams and individuals on their success trajectories, I got very interested in what intrinsically motivated people, right? The kind of that Daniel Pink thing. And so I started thinking about goals are great, but dreams are epic, which is what my TED Talk, the title, Goals Suck, Dreams Are Epic, right? But before that, I was working with inner city at-risk youth, and I was working with executives on helping them do epic things in their life. And going beyond the predictable and beyond the expected, going beyond the things that we had to do and that we ought to do, and working on also the things we really wanted to do. And then we were having so much success in helping people achieve and accomplish their dreams, not just their goals. Then we started to develop a mobile platform so we could scale it. That's not on pause right now. That's just in redevelopment, right? But I think the idea of helping people work on their dreams kind of enters into it now, even today. That's not always the task, right? It's not one size fits all in our field. We do have, there are theories of practice that work almost very consistently, and practitioners have toolkits. But being an organizational development practitioner, I really want to make my work assessment driven, client focused. Whether it be an organization, a team, or an individual, I want to find out where they've been, where they're going, and wrap the program and process around that, instead of showing up and saying, I know how you can succeed, just follow my, it's not shrink wrapped, right? It has to be adaptable and adoptable, but it really has to work for the client. So that's something I've really learned in my career is, does that person need something from the Dream platform or not, right? Does that person need something from the dojo or not, right? So just to really understand the customer and then serve them. That's kind of where we are.
And so when thinking about you going through the coaching journey with your clients throughout these years, what about it do you find most rewarding since you started doing this?
I think there's two probably things that really make me super happy. Those aspiring, upcoming, high potential, early mid-career manager leaders that you might become those thought leaders and those that everyone's going to know their name and look up to. It's when you've had only a front row seat, but had something to do with those individuals that have really achieved their dreams in their careers and become those CEOs or those elected officials and have been a part of it. I joke around when sometimes I'll introduce someone who's an elected official or CEO and say, oh yeah, back then we did this, and I'll jokingly say, and I take full credit, right? But I don't, obviously. But it's really rewarding when folks that you had a chance to help really do some epic stuff in their life, and you were a part of it. The other transformational thing that I really enjoy is when leaders can make themselves dispensable. When they become such great people leaders and develop their teams to do their job so they can do their very next thing, which in some cases just be able to take vacation and turn off their damn phone and not have to check their emails every day. If they can just do that, that's pretty epic, right? They can leave it and they come back and the place ain't burnt down and it's running as good, if not better than when they left it. So helping leaders develop their bench strength that's just really huge for a lot of folks. So coaching them in that regard I find very rewarding.
Absolutely. And so just for us to nail it down a little bit, when it comes to the clients that you work with, how would you describe the ideal client profile? Is there a certain demographic, certain industry, certain commonalities in the goals, any common theme?
It's really funny. If you look at the client list on my website, you'll go, wow, this dude's all over the place, right? He's worked with all these different industries, all these organizations at different size and scale, global, regional, private, public sector. I'm rather agnostic about the industry my clients are in, the widgets, the business they're in, because when people collide or align with process, there's always an opportunity to help people do better, right? So wherever they're coming from, whatever business they're in, industry, vertical they're in, there's always a way to add value and help. And where they are in their career trajectory, obviously they have to be in a place where it makes sense to have a career and executive coach, right? If they're too early stage in their career, it might not be a fit. If they're too late in their career, it might also not be a fit. Like if they already know everything and they don't plan to do anything else, and it's just maybe now go help their people that's running their foundation. Okay. There's some places where, okay, it's good. We'll just be friends. It's fine. But I think as long as you're working with people who are pushing the boundaries, raising the bar, making an impact, people talk about growth mindset, right? But they have to be interested in their own growth, not just the organizational financial growth. They have to be interested in their growth, learning and growth. They have to be willing to break their own paradigms, right? And if they just want someone to agree with them and help them make a little more money, there's other people that what they do. If you really want to send, because here's the thing, I may frame it this way. That's one of the toughest things to do is to be your own coach or to be your own sensei. Very often, folks in senior positions have trouble admitting they don't know everything and have trouble being vulnerable and transparent to say, okay, these are some of the opportunities for improvement. We have to be in a place where we know that we just can't be our own sensei all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And we're willing to be coached. So I think that's kind of the magic dust. I'm willing to be coached and I'm willing to sharpen my sword, and I realize that I can improve. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to tell them what to do, but I'm definitely going to be a resource.
So for these people that are listening that fit that criteria, how would you describe the engagement of them working with you? Is there a certain program of a certain length? How would you describe that engagement?
That's bandwidth, right? So what is the bandwidth? Are folks that we meet weekly. There are folks that will engage monthly, but they'll have some homework, right? There are folks I'll work with for 3 months. There'll be folks I'll work with for a few years. I think that's always about, this, how you scale the engagement has to do with, what's going to add value. Right. What is the appetite, the interest, sometimes also the budget, right? So I think we have to be flexible. I know that there are folks who definitely have, this is how it is, and if we don't do it that way, it's not going to happen. I'm very client focused. So I know if we can work together for 3 months, we're going to work together for 3 years. Not because I'm Mr. After Work and I'm going to upsell you. It's more like we're going to add enough value and make enough impact where that's going to happen, right? And if it doesn't, that's fine too. If it doesn't, that's okay too, right?
And where do people find you right now in terms of, and this is a question generally for other coaches who are listening, in terms of marketing channels, how do you find people, or how do people find you? Is there a certain marketing channel?
Yeah, Rexhen, this is kind of where you kind of come into play, because I'm relearning how we do that, right? I've been a very viral, organic, kind of in a space where most of my work has come from referral, right? And building upon a customer base that has, I've been engaged in. I think pre-COVID, that was, in other eras, it's been a global platform, right? I think because, the air was let out of our sails a little bit and the sand shifted underneath our feet, I'm really interested in building global engagements more. Right now, I'm a bit hyper-local, hyper-regional, because, that's sort of my sandboxes here. But I'm really interested, myself in expanding the marketing reach beyond, hey, Winslow's great, you need to talk to him, right? And, I remember when I was working with my daughters about scaling our startup a few years ago, one of my girls that was on my marketing team, she was making a pitch. I had all my girls pitch me, what was going to be our channel for scaling. And one of them, she said, she had her, she had her dry erase marker, and she was at the whiteboard, and she goes, YouTube is the gateway drug to all social media sites. And, it's like, I have a little bit of a presence out there, but I've never really leveraged that, right? And some of us boomers have to be willing to retool and reinvent, just like I'm running a session in a couple weeks for the C-suite about leveraging AI, right? Mm-hmm. About how we really, how strategically we accelerate what we do, with AI as sort of our strategic partner, right? It's a whole different conversation. At the same time, it's like, wait a second, I need to be my own customer and utilize the platforms like Rexhen, you and your team does, to scale and market. So I'm not going to be the marketing expert in this field. I'm actually more likely to be a student of what you're doing, I would say. Yeah.
Well, I got a good news on that, because for marketing, we are actually thinking of, like, with some of the coaches that we had on the podcast as well, and with some from our community, just a small group, 5 to 10 people, we're thinking of doing like a webinar. Is going to be one in the 7th and one in the 19th. So I'll just send you a link if you're interested in just learning about the strategy. It's going to be Davis mostly hosting that webinar, so I'm just going to send it your way.
Yeah.
And we'll share more about it also at the end of our conversation. But yeah, there will be a very good fit for you, I think.
I would love that, because one thing that I've been doing, which is working fairly well, to answer the question, in terms of, what has been working, is content creation, blogging, and kind of distributing that on social platforms and others, right? So I think that, being a subject matter expert, you have to own your category, right? So in terms of, as a writer and as a subject matter expert, I think my superpower is content creation. Distribution of that content is probably where I need to partner with others better, team up a little bit better. So yeah, I think that's where I'm interested in learning more myself.
So In looking into the future for the next, let's say, 1 to 3 years, where do you see it going? Do you have any specific goals you're working towards?
Yeah, I really have, in the past in my career, I have really enjoyed not only the work I've done regionally, but the work I've done, globally. When I've worked in Asia, Europe, the Mid East, Latin America. I find it just, invigorating to work in other with an intergenerational and a multicultural environment, right? So I think my challenge myself is to continue to add value outside of, let's say, my regional comfort zone. So, in Texas or in California or, anywhere in North America, okay, I can read the room pretty well. It's being able to read the room when I'm outside of my region and also be effective there, which has gone very well in the past. I'd like to continue to do more of that, actually.
And so, where, like, thinking about that as goal, where do you see a challenge right now that you're trying to solve for next to get closer to that?
I think that, a lot of things have changed in how we market, how we communicate, how we distribute. There's one thing is one recent article I wrote, which I was not thinking full on the global scale yet about it, was I wrote an article called The Attention Economy. The attention economy and why you probably won't read this, right? So the attention economy has to do with, the span, the bandwidth people have to even absorb information, process it, and decision make. A lot of that has really changed. It's like TLDR is become a 3-minute article is too long, right? Too long to read. It's how to penetrate the consciousness of learners, not because they're not intelligent, not because they're not curious, not interested. It's what people become used to, they become accustomed to, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that dissemination of the messaging, I think the challenge is being effective there, right? I see that sometimes there was an article I wrote on LinkedIn, could have been, I don't know, in the early days of LinkedIn, it's almost 20 years ago. I got thousands of views and hundreds of likes, right? Which was a lot back then, right? Now that message might get me 100 views and 5 likes. Okay.
Yeah.
So how we communicate has become really important. How we message. So I would think the challenge is to really current, relevant, and abandoning your core values, your core message, your core value proposition. At the same time, you've got to connect your dots. You got to connect with your customer market, your target audiences.
We've seen this actually come up as a topic a few times on the podcast, not just like you're comparing it way to a few years ago, but it was just like comparing LinkedIn was just a couple of years ago. It was just like a lot more engagement and something changed in the algorithm there. Either was it post-COVID or something like that. Something changed. And from an interview that I had with a coach, they did a lot of layoffs and somehow the algorithm kind of like got messed up a little bit. And it's just like not as much engagement right now with LinkedIn as it used to be. So it has been some challenge that has been brought up in the podcast before too.
Well, and Rexhen, you bring up a really interesting point. The rate of change right now, and largely because of AI, the rate of change is exponential. It's absolutely exponential. Like the I'm going to deliver in 2 weeks on AI. It's everything we say is going to probably become half of it's going to become obsolete 2 weeks after that, right? Some of it won't. There's going to be some in knowledge and concepts that will survive whatever happens. But a lot of it's going to just change as quickly. As soon as we say it, it's going to evaporate and it's become something else. I wrote an article last year about marketing called Playing in Traffic. So whether it be viral or digital, how we play in traffic has to be really alert and agile and forward thinking. So when we're playing in traffic on LinkedIn or any other social platform or in any other channel, we have to be really forward thinking, because whatever we're doing and whatever's working right now, we just can't get comfortable, right, with that. And I think it's cool for me to remind my fellow boomers or Xers or whoever, it's like we have to be continually learning and consuming new content to understand where we need to be able to, because I think how we serve our customers, that doesn't have to change that much, right? Not that, the core, the substance of what we do is is, that's the test. But, how we frame it, how we package it, how we distribute it, definitely has to be fresh.
By the way, I really like how creatively you put the titles on. These are very, very titles. So yeah, it seems very, 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 I don't know, very special in a way that you're just like the one for the attention and why you probably want to read this.
Yeah. If you look at the blog page of my website, there's a lot of fun titles in there. Hire weird is one of them, right? If you want innovation, hire weird, right? It's like, don't hire like yourself. And during at South by Southwest, we were guerrilla marketing. We were doing some, it's like you just always be able to look at things in a way that it's just, you can't. My brother, who's marketing and advertising in the TV and film business, he loved to say, you can't bore people into doing business with you. And I like to say, you can't bore people into learning either. Mm-hmm. So that's why as a teacher, facilitator, everything I do has to be experiential. You have to engage the learners. In fact, when my brother says, hey, when you do this AI thing, who's your panel? It's like, my panel is the participants. Mm-hmm. My panel is the participants. I'm putting the toolkits in their hands. They are going to be the subject matter experts by the time we're done with it, right? It's like you have to flip the script every chance you get, in my opinion. Okay.
I really like that. And so right now, I also wanted to ask you, throughout time, as a coach and having your coaching business focused on that, what have been some investments that you've made that you feel very good about and proud of, or you feel like there was a good return from these investments? Could be one, could be many, could be investments in yourself, investments in the coaching business. What are some investments that probably you feel like they were a waste of time, or like investments that you feel like you could have avoided or didn't turn out to be that good?
Well, I hope you're okay with my answer, because it might not be what's expected of the traditional guest. The best investment, and probably the really good investment that I've made, or at the very top, has been investing in my children, their education, their knowledge, their experience, to help build another generation of thought leaders. So I have friends who have really great condos and on the beach and all this sort of kind of stuff, and I love that. I have kids that live in other parts of the world that are making a dent in the universe. Okay. So whatever that cost us was worth every penny, and things that we might not have bought for ourselves, or the dividends are many, many fold, because look, we planted trees for which other generations will have shade.
Yeah.
And I would think also in terms of all the people I've taught in a dojo, even though my dojos have not always been profit centers. As a sensei running a traditional Japanese dojo, a lot of times I was supplementing the overhead of my dojos, right? But I've taught thousands of people whose not only their lives have improved, but they've made other people's lives better. So for me, those are my major investments. Okay. A real estate thing here and stuff. Okay, fine. You know what? Nothing spectacular, obviously, in that regard. What's spectacular is a couple of generations of folks that are now also positively influencing generations of folks.
Interesting. I really like that. And it seems like it makes a lot of sense investing in the new generations to come and doing the same thing like a few years later for the next generation. It just keeps improving that way. So right now, and for the coaches who are listening to this is the question is, what advice would you give to other coaches like yourself, and could be an advice for yourself as well, who are thinking of scaling their impact?
I would say that trust your knowledge, trust your wisdom, trust your experience to be able to support your missions and your visions to scale. That no goal or vision for your growth is too big for you. If you have made one person's life better as an executive career coach, you can make 100 or thousands of people's lives better. Okay, so like if you have imposter syndrome, it's like, who am I to be such a big? No, you already own it. Own your expertise. Own your superpowers, whatever they are. Know what your kryptonites are too. People that do the Strength Finder stuff talk about how our arts and strengths can be in the balcony or the basement, right? Be self-aware. Continue to work on yourself, right? You don't have those blind spots. Okay, so do that. Do your own customer. Have a coach. Have a sensei. Don't try to be your own sensei all the time, right? But I would say the main thing is if you are effective and successful at helping others, grow and achieve and improve, then double down on that, tap into it and take that with you to next opportunities and that light into the world, right? Don't keep it a secret.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Winslow. And thank you so much for coming to our podcast today. For anyone who wants to connect with you or find you, they can go, number one, they can go into LinkedIn and look up Winslow Swart. They'll be able to find you there. The second way is they can go into the website, winslow-consulting.com, right?
Yep. That's two easy ways to get, and them on other social platforms. I was overseas with one of my colleagues one time, and he's a millennial, and this is only a couple of years ago, and I was doing something on my phone. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm doing this on Instagram and here and that and the other." And he looks at me and goes, "Wow, dude, you're the oldest millennial I know." I'm just kidding. I'm accessible on social platforms.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you so much, Winslow. Thank you so much for coming to the show. It was lovely to have you on.
Okay, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This podcast was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, or even $100,000 weeks, all without burning out and making sure that you're making the impact and having the life that you want. To learn more about our community and how we can help you, visit joinpurplecircle.com.